Welcome to the DesignQA podcast, where we dive into how great designers deliver high quality products and the messy reality of getting there. I'm your host, Mahdi Farra, product designer, founder of DesignQA.com, and someone who spent the last 17 years building and scaling digital products from the ground up. I design, I code, I obsess over the details that makes great UX actually happen. In each episode, I sit down with experienced designers to talk through their QA workflows, the tools they rely on, and the lessons they've learned shipping real products. And we end up with something a little different, a live design QA where we take an honest look at a real product and talk through what works and what could be better. Today's guest is Rodrigo Leles, a product designer with over 15 years of experience. We talk about his unique path into design, how he approaches quality, and we wrap things up by reviewing one of his favorite websites live. Let's jump in. All right. So welcome, Rodrigo, to the show. I'm really happy and glad to have you with us today. Let me first give a quick intro. Our guest today is Rodrigo. He's a senior product designer. He worked with a lot of great companies, including If This Then That. I used to be a huge fan when they were just starting out, and I used their product pretty heavily to grow my audience on Twitter. Yeah, I will. Let's get things started. Hi, Rodrigo.
By the way, am I pronouncing your name correctly? Is Mahdi the right way to
Yeah,
pronounce
Mahdi.
it? Awesome. Okay, I did my homework. Okay. Thank
Very
you so
well,
much
I
for
see.
having me. Thanks so much for having me. Thank you for your time. And yeah, I'm a digital designer. Roles are changing the name every day. Some people call it digital designer, UX designer, UI designer, product designer. But yeah, I do love creating digital stuff and try to solve people's problems on screens. Sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's not, but it's just, I enjoy the process in the end of the day. But yeah, I'm from São Paulo, Brazil. I started my career on advertising, trying to agencies that were the only places in which we could people enjoying creating websites back in the day could
Mhm.
find a place to be paid on doing that kind of stuff.
But it's
We
also the
were
best place to build like an experience, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I was lucky on that side, Mahdi, because I got my first work in an agency that worked with some good clients like Absolute Vodka, BMW, and some
Hmm.
other huge brands in Brazil and in the world.
Wow.
But in the end of the day, we were supporting like the art directors that were creating the big advertising films and ads for magazines and
Hmm.
trying to replicate their ideas into web stuff, whatever we're talking about, ads, digital ads, or websites. And after getting this experience, startups started to appear in Brazil. We were
Hmm.
always somehow behind the US because we are not known as a country that is known for its tech.
Hmm.
Fortunately, this is changing, as
Yeah.
probably we will talk about that further. But yeah, and then after I got my first work as my first job in a small web agency, that then I realized, okay, it is possible to work as a digital designer, whatever you call it, from Brazil, earn some money, and then yeah,
Nice.
then I would say that where my career started.
I love it. I love it. So, just to get things started, a quick weird question for you. What's a weird design habit you currently have?
Weird design habit. Well, I like over documenting stuff. I know it's a weird,
Interesting.
but yeah, I don't trust my memory really. So I have to rely on like for my everyday tasks like dealing like watering the plants or walking the dogs, I had to put small check boxes on notes, for example. The app notes on my phone, and
Hmm.
I do that for tasks, for my own tasks, design related or not.
Hmm.
So yeah, I have this huge backlog of like mixed stuff, like creating a prototype for X, Y, and Z, and go buy groceries and then clean up my room. I'll mix it up because if I don't write it, I won't do it.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I think a lot of people are like that. It's not so weird, honestly. I
Okay,
like that.
awesome. I don't feel that strange.
You can say that you are extra organized, not doing something
I
weird.
will
Yeah,
take that as a compliment. Thank you.
it is a compliment. That's great. So Tell me a little bit more about your like your how you started the career. You mentioned that you started with like with working with agencies because that was the only place where you can design websites, and then startups started coming in or started opening up in Brazil. But how did you get to where you are at right now? Like what were the steps for you to get into the last position you got at if this then that? Because this is a giant company. This is a great one. So
Yeah.
very curious to hear about that, and I think the audience will also be curious.
Yeah, that was a dream made true, to be honest, Mahdi, because when I applied to IFTTT, I know this company, I used the product like a few years ago. And when I tried this tool for the first time, it looks like magic. Like suddenly
Right.
I was doing like crazy stuff, like setting a trigger to send me an SMS back in the day when we used SMS messages to tell me when the last TV show was going to be aired, things like that. And we're using our RSS feeds back in the day when we used RSS
I
feeds. So
remember those days.
yeah, right. And yeah, but trying to summarize like how I went from, designing, like drawing stuff, trying to be a comic book designer in my childhood, to
Mm.
starting using my computer to create my own websites. My first website was an anime for an anime called Samurai X. Not sure if you're familiar with anime, but I just created by myself back in the day when guest books were a thing on websites. Do you remember sign my guest book?
Of
Oh
course.
man, such a different internet back in the day.
Very
But
innocent internet. Yeah.
yeah, very innocent. Yeah. But actually, I am a former electrician technician. I think
Oh,
is the right way to pronounce it. Yeah, I can design a whole wire of electric in the home, for example. That's because my mother sent me to school to have some kind of formation so I can look for my first job. And that kind of course that was a scholarship by the government. And after 2 years, I got a degree, so to speak, on electronic engineering. It's not exactly that term. And
mm-hmm.
I work on fixing notebooks for a long time. That was
Oh,
my bread and butter during my teenage years. And I was like, I can say that I was earning a lot of money for a teenager fixing
mm.
computers, but my dream was to work on tech, was to design solutions, digital stuff. And I got my
Makes sense.
first
Yeah.
internship on a airline company to work on to design email marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And that internship I was earning like one third of what I was earning when I was fixing computers.
Mm.
So in order to, have this opportunity to talk to you about IFT, I had to do some tough choices during
Mm.
my childhood, during my teenage years, not my childhood. My parents were
Right.
not happy about it, but
But
it was,
it's very interesting that you had a very clear idea of the like a very clear end goal in mind, and you were
I
very
did.
determined to reach that. I love that.
Yeah, yeah. I
Speaks a lot about you.
Yeah, I mean, you can make some of those decisions when you live with your parents. It's easy,
Mm.
so to speak, to make some
Right.
of those choices. But I don't know, man. Somehow I had this voice inside that told me, "Hey, you're doing this. You're getting some money." I bought my first car, very old car, but like it was my dream. I got my first car. I started
Mm.
studying digital design. And I got a bachelor later. But while I was studying digital design in the graduation, I was still working on fixing computers. And in the middle of the graduation, then I did this. I had to do this downgrade to,
Mm.
a few years later, create some experience and add some cool brands and projects to my portfolio, and then be able to start working to some small tech companies in Brazil. So yeah, I just need to kind of summarize this first
Mm.
part, because yeah, it was a leap of faith, definitely.
Nice. Yeah. I love that.
But yeah, and then I mean, a long story short, my first two of the most important experience I got here in Sao Paulo, I worked for AB InBev. I don't know if you're familiar with. It's like the biggest brewery in the world. They own brands like Budweiser,
Oh, okay.
Hoegaarden. Yeah, and they have like this branch in Brazil to deal with e-commerce and any other digital experience for their brands. They are huge because they own pretty much the whole logistics of beverages, like in Brazil. But they started to kind of create this experimental office to kind of disrupt things around beer. And I had the chance to create like the craziest stuff because it wasn't like the main goal of the company to create apps, but they wanted to sell beer. So how can I create an app that maybe educates people about beer and then I can use that somehow to earn some money? And that's where one of the places that I had the chance to create the most like funny and experimental digital experience. It was actually my first experience as a UX designer. It's my first, like in my resume, it was my first experience as a UX designer, period.
Mm-hmm.
Then I managed to know what is a sprint, what does a product manager does, what is a front-end developer, a back-end developer. And then I realized, okay, man, this is it. This is what I want to do. Then I left the company to join 99. 99 is today is the biggest Uber competitor in Brazil.
Okay.
And I joined their team to work on the safety squad, to understand how could we make rides safer for passengers and drivers. And I was there exactly when this company became the first Brazilian unicorn. So it was crazy. It was such a
Awesome.
big deal. Yeah. They were acquired by Didi, which like is the owner of like, I think is the biggest player in this market in Asia. I'm pretty sure that they are in China, not sure in the entire Asia.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, things changed a lot after this acquisition. But while I was in the middle of this huge movement, my English was improving. I was studying a lot. I was looking at the US, of course, because this is where things are happening in tech.
Yeah,
And I
big
was invited.
opportunities. Yeah.
Exactly. And I was invited to join a challenge to be a head of design on a small company called Cooklist from Texas. And they wanted someone to present some ideas, like how could you solve this problem in our UI? Again, long story short, I won this challenge and suddenly I was remotely working for a company with some guys that I never saw in person.
Incredible.
But
Love it.
yeah,
Before COVID.
before COVID, yeah. And yeah, they started remotely first. Yeah, I think it's such a small team of like two people, the CEO and the CFO. I think the backend guy were from Bulgaria. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think it's from Bulgaria. And then like looking back today, they were not paying me a lot, but it was more than a senior role in 99 was paying me
Right.
in
Yeah.
back in the day because of the currency. And then after leaving the company, I was so afraid of leaving Night Night because it was a whole, it was a company. Like I had all the perks and everything. We got bonuses. I got healthcare. But again, some voice in my head said, hey, you need to take this other leap of faith. And then I did it. And then it was a big and important experience for me. And after that, I realized, okay, I think this is the thing. I'm not better than any San Francisco designer, but I believe on my skills that I can compete with those guys on the same roles that are not require me to move to San Francisco, for example, to New York, to Los Angeles. I have the same, we can be in the same room. Designers from San Francisco are not better than Latin designers or European designers. They're there. So they have this
Right.
unfair advantage. Half of the tech jobs on design are there. It's okay. But this imposter syndrome kind of ended for myself. And then I realized, okay, my goal is an international career and I can apply for this job as long as they are remotely from Brazil or
Interesting.
globally.
What was the thing that clicked in your brain that got you to realize that, okay, I am now ready to get over
Imposter syndrome?
the imposter syndrome?
Yeah. Yeah. This is something that it gets us, right? It doesn't matter which professional we are talking about.
No, but I mean, like, how did you overcome it? Like, how did you
Yeah,
get over that?
that's a very interesting question. I believe, like back in when I was working on at ABI, this is such a global company. So at some point, we were invited to present a part of a project in Mexico. And it was my first experience abroad ever. I never stepped outside Brazil before this opportunity. I panicked. Suddenly, I had to like sit in a room full of people very skilled and talented talking English. And okay, let's do it. Okay, I need to do it. It's my work. Not only we did that with this team and discussed a lot of stuff, but later we spent like 5 days in Mexico, I guess, city of Mexico. And suddenly my boss approached me and said, hey, can you present this topic to the entire design team? And I was like, oh man, come on. I'm here. I'm already uncomfortable. You asked me to do that. But again, I did it. I mean, I'm not saying
Mm,
that my English is perfect, far from it, but suddenly that unlocked something in my head because I was talking about things that I love. So it's kind of comfortable to talk about design and productivity and tech in another
mhm.
by not using in your native language. But after that experience, think yeah, something clicked. You know, in and it was the first time I felt like I can be in the same room of those guys. We are talking about the same thing. I have things to
Mhm.
contribute. At the same time, I have things to learn. And suddenly, when I got back to Brazil, presenting stuff was like a piece of cake because look what I did in
Because
Mexico,
you've done the hard thing.
Exactly. And then the
I
bar
love
was
that.
pushed. And once the bar
Yeah.
is pushed, you realize, okay, I did it. And again,
I'm
it's
invincible
important to
now.
celebrate. Yeah, it's important to celebrate those victories, man, because
Of course.
it's something that we often, we take for granted. We tend to always push ourselves on our skills, no matter which skills we are talking about. Learning a new language, playing the guitar, learning this new AI stuff trend that is happening every day. It's giving everyone a lot of FOMO. But it's important yeah, it's important to celebrate those things, man. And yeah, so
Right.
I guess what clicked, it's what unlocked this possibility of applying to jobs abroad was that experience.
That's incredible. I love that story, and it's very inspiring because they all have that imposter syndrome inside of us, whether it's in one area or multiple areas. And it's always interesting to me to learn how others are getting over that challenge with the imposter syndrome.
And to be honest, like the best people that I had the chance to work with, they always believe they're not good enough. And they were incredible, so talented people. And they were always thinking that someone was better than they were. And I think it's better to work with people like this than to work with people that believe they are the kings. And
Right.
usually these
Yeah.
people that have like, they're full of themselves, they are so good on marketing themselves to other people than doing
Hmm.
and delivering the proper work, which sometimes is an advantage. There are some companies and places that value this skill, but I don't like to be, around these people. My experience were very toxic around this kind of people, but those are the ones that are usually promoted first.
Right. Yeah. The ones with the loudest voices, I guess.
Precisely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's move to our next segment, which is QA in the wild. So, can you tell me a little bit about your typical QA process? I'm sure it evolved throughout the years. I want to learn from you what is your typical QA process nowadays for ensure that your designs are implemented correctly, to ensure that your designs pass all your checkpoints for accessibility, usability, and all of these things that you care about as an experienced designer.
Yeah, I my approach to Q&A, Mahdi, is probably not the best one, but is one that worked a lot because I spent actually more time talking to engineers and approaching and try to understand their side instead of imposing the best feedback tool to provide feedback. And I'll tell you why this worked for my experience. I'm not saying that this is like a no-brainer at all. When I approach with my very simple front end and encoding skills, I know how to talk the same language of engineers. So
Right.
even though I never wrote any React native line myself, I understand what kind of implications a specific kind of animation in the interface has to their deadlines and
Hmm.
to their workflows. So the first thing I did when I joined IFTTT, for example, was to approach the Brazilian designers, to present myself and to be friends with them. And I talked to the other engineers, front end and back end guys, trying to present myself as a partner. And my approach to design is design as a discipline. And what do I mean by that? I believe everyone in the company, from the intern to the marketing manager to the CEO, everybody has important inputs about the product because they work in the same company. They love the product. So I'm not saying that you should hear what everyone's saying and do that in the product. But when you open your ears to hear everyone's opinion, people felt comfortable on talking to you
Mm-hmm.
about, deadlines and about tasks. And it makes so easier to approach someone when they say, hey, that's a bug. That's a very critical one. Can we fix it?
Right,
And
right.
that is before introducing any tool, any process to the Q&A. So that's the first thing I would recommend,
So
for example.
So your first recommendation is to learn front-end engineering to understand the medium or the tools the engineers use to implement your designs. And the second one is to be willing to hear more than you talk and to open up and be more of an ally rather than someone asking or pushing work for other people in the team. You are just showing them that we are working together on this and you're listening to their ideas. You want to involve them in your process in a way.
Precisely. I don't like to be the guy that just send Figma files and say, hey, do it. Do it. It's approved by the CEO.
Right.
I think this approach is really strange. Maybe something cultural, or maybe it's just the way I work, but that opened me
I get that.
many doors, to do the things that I wanted to do in the product based on my experience, based on data, based on research. And after that,
Mhm.
I really, my ideal flow was to introduce some tool like workflow, for example. I don't know if you're familiar. I think it's in beta, but it's a tool that pretty much it's an infinite canvas that you can paste a screen or a video or a link, and then it is a collaborative tool that everyone can go and put some pins and then provide feedback. It's pretty
Mm.
cool and very friendly, because it's another thing that this, if you're willing to bring a tool for feedback, this
Yeah.
tool doesn't need to work for you, it needs to work for other people because they
Right,
are
right.
bringing feedback, right?
So yeah, tell me more about this tool. So you said that this tool felt like the best medium to share your ideas and thoughts with the team to get them to collaborate. Tell me more about that because I'm very curious.
Yeah. Yeah. Using IFTTT as the example, what led me to work on this design system project that we talked about when we met was the amount of inconsistencies in the interfaces. Suddenly a
Hmm.
button was the same button on different screens, but on different media. A button was like the same button, but on different media, it was different. So the same button should be the same style on Android and iOS, but on web was different.
Hmm.
And then a text size, and then some space, some spacing, some alignments. And what I did in order to approach and fix and make sure that the interfaces were more consistent and had more quality was to first, when I see something, say something, and I try to
Hmm.
convince everyone in the company that this was important. So if you see something that doesn't look good, just open a
Hmm.
ticket, and we try to prioritize as much as we can.
Hmm.
Part of my everyday task was to identify those inconsistencies, because I believe that was kind of a design system before I joined the company, but it probably was lost in the sea of prioritizations and different things that the company need to do, and that's okay. And that's okay. That's why I try to advocate on having at least some kind of library, which was the thing that we ended up making. So
Mm.
not only engineers could see and understand how a component behaves, but maybe marketing could see and understand how an interface was built. So pretty much we
What,
found
just to make sure I understand this, what do you mean by a library? Is it like a smaller design system or more like
it was
and how were you sharing that with
yeah.
the team? Where was it hosted on?
That's a important question, because to be honest, we did not create it like a design system per se, because a design system needs to live outside Figma. It needs to be something that coders can rely and pick a code and
Mm.
paste it and use these pieces of code and rules as Lego pieces, for example, in the final interface. That's the main point.
Mhm.
Um, I believe this was the next step while I was in the company. But what we did was to create a Figma library using symbols and variations,
Mhm.
in a way that was presented easily for anyone to see how to build those
Mm.
things visually. Uh, okay, that is easy to do when you're a designer, but again, this is something that doesn't need to be useful for you as a designer. It needs to be useful for engineers, for front-end engineers mainly. But
Right.
I tried to address another problem that I found inside the company, which was brand inconsistency. So one of the most asked questions on the companies is like, what, where is the last version of our logo? What are our main colors? Which typeface do we use? And alongside this Figma UI library, I created a brand library because
Mm-hmm.
it was worth it, to dedicate time to do that. Because suddenly we were trying to solve the
Of
two
course.
problems. We created a brand library for everyone that was willing to see how to use the brand for any kind of marketing materials like presentations and emails. But for engineers, we created this other version that presented how a website a landing page on IFTTT, for example, could be built using our own Lego parts. So I think that was the most important part, to understand that this was not something that was built for myself. Of course, this made my life
Mm-hmm.
easier because suddenly we were designing screens half of the time, even less than that, because things were componentized. But everyone could have one source of truth when it comes to our
Mm.
visual. On top of that, I created documentation on the documentation. You know what I mean? Because people were afraid of Figma. And it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's a designer tool. It's not a marketing tool. So
Right.
we were using shortcuts, I believe. I think something, it's like Jira, but it's friendlier, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion. We shift to this task management tool, and they inside shortcut they have shortcut docs. It was perfect. It was perfect for me to not only create like our branding docs,
Mm-hmm.
presenting our brand steps and our UI steps, pasting there some links to the specific parts of the brand guideline. So if you want to see our fonts, this is the one. If you want to see our logo in SVG format, just tap this link. I created that and I recorded myself using Loom, going
Nice.
over some of those docs and presenting, hey, you just need to tap here. What do you need to do? You need to are looking for some emails. An email is made by typography, colors, and brand. Here is
Mm.
what you need to do in order to get those.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's not a design system per se because it doesn't go.
It is a design system. It's not just fully embedded within the engineering workflow.
Yeah,
You
that's the point.
basically, yeah, did the design part of the system. The other part, which is building the actual components and hosting them somewhere like in Storybook, is the other part. But it doesn't mean that what you built is not a design system. I still believe it is a design system because I'm sure that it allowed you and the team to think about problems differently. It freed up your mind to work on solving big problems rather than just building the same components every time. Like instead of building buttons or components like forms and so on, you are more focused now on fixing larger problems that affect the business more deeply.
Yeah, we managed to fix not only an inconsistency problem in the interface that
Mm-hmm.
was like everywhere, but even a communication problem because suddenly
Mm.
we could help everyone in the company to build things if it's related. And I believe that's part of the work of the designer as well. I believe I try to avoid the word system because that's a project that I proposed myself and I worked alongside my everyday task, but it's not my priority. But when I said system for the first time, though, I think people panicked. Oh no, we don't need to build another system. We need other things to do. And
Yeah,
it was okay. And then I
scary word.
shifted my approach. Like, okay, what about a library? What about a place that shows quickly to everyone where to download our fonts? Okay, that's fine. You can
Mm.
work on that. And then it worked. Don't get attached to
Got it,
names
got it.
too much.
Makes total sense. Can you speak about the impacts of your system or your design library on design QA and bugs?
It had a lot of positive impacts, Mahdi, I can say. First was that again that people that I connected before, and I was collecting, data to understand why they needed to see where the brand are, where the typography were, where the colors were. They liked a lot. So that increased how we increased the amount of chances we had to articulate design decisions because people started to trust
Mhm.
more in the design team. Again, I think it's important to give value to this approach to people because your deliverables can increase your confidence in the company, and then you can suddenly articulate better decisions that have more impact in the product. But to talk about numbers, we were designing things faster in our end. I was working with another designer, and for everyday tasks, we dropped the amount of time to deliver a fixed screen in like 1/3 of the time that we used to do that before. And for bugs, for visual bugs, we had to open like half of the number of tickets to fix design bugs, but UI bugs than before, because again, there was documentation for engineers to rely on and maybe fix things by themselves when they see something that is broken. So in general, it sped up the everyday tasks related to consistency inside the company.
That's great. Okay. Well, then let's move to the next segment, which is the Pixel Patrol, or the segment where we take a look at like a product or an app that you use, and for us to review that product together. I want to hear what you have to say about the product and basically tear it down with good intentions to improve it and make it better. Do you have one prepared in mind?
It's a very weird tool, but it's experimental. I think this is interesting because we can see how a developer thinks about an interface and how a developer makes it good and fast to use, but how some things that are easy for us designers to spot are left aside. Should I send you the link or maybe share my screen? Not sure how do you want to.
Yeah, you can share your screen.
Okay. Screen, window.
Oh, I love Cobalt.
Oh, okay. So familiar with it. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
love
maybe
it. I don't
for
think
people
it's that popular, or is it?
I don't think so. Maybe it is after you presented in your podcast.
Right. Yeah. So tell us what this is, what this product is for.
Yeah. So this is a tool to download media from video websites. If you use it, make sure you're using what you downloaded in not infringing any laws, but it worked pretty well, and it's actually, I think it's expanding to a lot of different tools every day. And there's some interesting decisions here that I believe there's no designer behind it, and I might be wrong, but things like error treatment is not that good because some of the errors are very generic, and there's a lot of things going on maybe here in the first homepage that maybe could only be visible after you pasted a link. So for example, here I have the options to download audio. What does audio means? Now I know that it's the sound and together with the video, but again, maybe a different copy here would be interesting. Audio, just download the sound of the video in MP3 format, or just the video. But I mean, if we're looking to be very critical about quality, about the experience, maybe this should not be visible at all if the link that is here isn't valid. For example, it's one last step and one last element to show to the user a glance.
But maybe right. But maybe you can tell our audience, how does it work here? Like what's a basic use case for this? Let's say I have a YouTube video. How can I download it? Because even that might not be very obvious, right?
Definitely. Let me see an example here. Yeah, let me pick just a random video here, and let me share my screen again so everybody can see how this Cobalt tool works. Screen, window, share. Okay. Yeah, so like the happy path here is you paste a YouTube link. It doesn't do anything. Maybe it should do automatically since the field is filled, but you have to tap the arrows here, and then it will do and say that just the link that I tried is restricted. Okay.
Interesting.
It restarted very well. Let me try.
No, but that's an example of the errors you were talking about, that the errors are not clear, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's saying, let me try it again. I can't have access to the video, maybe restricted on YouTube sites. Try a different link. I had a problem trying to download a video this week, and I only found out that it was age restricted after a lot of Google's research, because I tried all different ways to download it and it was not possible. But it was
Interesting.
a music video and there was kind of some language barrier that the creator added to the video, and that was not possible to download. Let's try another one just for curiosity. Got it. Okay, so can take this one. Okay, so now we have like
Mm,
something like the processing queue, which again, maybe
mm,
it's too much information for user, but I can't believe how cool it is for a developer to add that and show that actually this is running in the background is something cool. Let me show this to the user. I mean, I get it, but
mm.
for the most part of us, this is not like useful. And probably there's a lot of people using Cobalt today, so there's
How
no
would you
room for us.
redesign this if you had the chance to?
I would remove a lot of stuff. I would only show errors to the user that are
Hmm.
really relevant and maybe try to, if possible, in the backend, if you could like identify what is causing the error to be more clear about what's going on so the user can take action, you know.
Mm,
For me, the idea of there's a processing queue here, I mean, it's great, but that's not something that needs to be shown in the interface. This
yeah,
information here is important, you know. I mean, I can't process it now because there's a lot of people using the tool. So maybe just showing this in a model would be enough. Again, we are talking about, but it's just this one title, just one row of text. But again, if when we are adding this stuff, suddenly
hmm,
your interface is very crowded because you want to show everything to the user to show that you're working in the background, you know. But sometimes it's not necessary. But I
right,
like
right,
the
right.
illustrations. The illustrations are cool.
Yeah, cool. What about the rest of the UI? Is there anything that you feel not so great about, things that you appreciate?
You know, the things that I like the most because I was trying to look for a solution to this specific use case for a long time, and I like
Hmm.
that this one, even considering my feedback, it just works. Most of the time, Cobalt is the one that works for me, and I don't have to
Hmm.
tap anything because it tries to get the video in the highest resolution possible, in the highest quality possible. It gets most of the errors right, even though it could be more specific. And to be honest, I never had to touch any of these tools here. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, but again, this is for heavy users and try to explore things here. But I think this is the best case of something that if it works, you don't need to show these tools.
Hmm.
Things don't need to be prominent in the interface. Just hide it before, after one or two clicks, because if the user doesn't want to download something simple and it's possible to download the video, it will work. So yeah, I guess I like it. Maybe I don't have much feedback on it.
Yeah, that's plenty of good feedback. Well, thank you very much. And with that, I think we're about to wrap up. I really want to thank you, Rodrigo, again for all the great things that we chatted about. I loved learning about your experience, your story, and how you got to design. It's truly inspiring. And in particular, I loved your tips on how to get over the imposter syndrome. I will always remember that. And before we end up, I would love for you to, or to give you the chance to plug in a website or a project you want people to check out. At the end, I will be sharing, of course, your personal profiles like Twitter, LinkedIn, or whatever you want to provide for people to find you online. But is there anything you want to plug in, like a website, a project?
Yeah. Well, first, thank you for your time, Mahdi. Sorry for the bumps on the road and the connection. Hope you managed to do your magic on your ends and make this interview make sense. But yeah, something that I recommend designers do, and I'm doing myself right now because I'm in the middle of this sabbatical phase, so to speak. So I've been, since I left IFT, I tried a lot of different stuff that I didn't have the time to do, dedicating more time to my family and some side projects. And one side project is a YouTube channel to talk about music,
Mm,
which is something I love. And I always found something an excuse to not do it, and now I out of excuses, so I'm just doing I'm writing essays to talk about
love it.
music on a YouTube. So I writing a lot, I learning a lot of new skills that I never tried before, like scripting and video editing and motion animation for videos. So yeah, it's something I'm building as a
Awesome.
side project. Gives me a lot of satisfaction and
What's the
gives
channel
me.
name for people to find it?
It's in Portuguese. I'm not sure if it's easy to pronounce, but it's called. I will send to in the chat. It's called Stereosphere, but it's Stereosphere
Stereosphere.
in Brazilian Portuguese. Yeah.
Okay.
That was the cool names were all
Stereosphere.
taken, so sorry about that.
That's cool. And yeah, go ahead, continue.
Yeah, and yeah, right now alongside this side hustle, more recently, I'm back to business. So I'm trying to reconnect well a lot of cool people that I worked in the past to understand how how the opportunities are going on right now. What are the expectations on the designer in 2025? And open to projects, open to conversations like this. Again, thank you for the opportunity.
Mhm.
And yeah, I will left my contacts and my portfolio with you. And if you're watching this, have any interesting projects that I want to discuss and design, that's
Awesome. And how people can find you online? Do you have a portfolio website, LinkedIn?
yeah, everything.
What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, rodrigoleles.com. That's the way to go. That's the place to go.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for your time and for joining me here today. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I'm really glad that we connected. Yeah, well, I'm sure that we will be chatting again in the future. So, thank you again, Rodrigo. And with that, we'll end this episode of the Design QA show. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Design QA podcast. Big thanks to Rodrigo for sharing their origin story with me, their workflows, and for joining me on the live Design QA session. It's always very interesting for me to see how other designers look at details and how they think about product quality. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider following the show, leaving a quick rating, and sharing it with someone who obsesses over details as much as we do. You can find Rodrigo on his website, rodrigoleles.com. I will be leaving that in the show note. And if you want to see more of what I'm building, head to designqa.com. And lastly, if you are an experienced designer or you know someone you think we should interview, please shoot me an email at podcast@designqa.com. Until next time, keep pushing pixels and don't forget to check the margins.